how to create a drawing document in Google Drive that you will then use to collaborate with the other members of your group in order to visualize the cookie problem. So the first step will be to create a drawing. And then you can add a nice background color to this drawing document. And then you can insert a table. And this can be a bit tricky. You want it to be 20 by 20. And first thing is to resize it a little bit so it will all fit on one page. And then we're going to have to create some axes. So I found that one of the best ways to resize it so it fits all on the page is to highlight all the cells and shrink their font size. And then you can fit it on the page, I think. Okay, there we go. Now this will allow us to use the edges here to create some axes. So then the next step will be to create some axes numbers. Now you are going to have to decide what the axes and the scale will be, but here's how you do it. And you don't have to mark every tick, but this is one way to see how this would work. So I've created a text box, and then I put a number in there, and then I can copy it and paste another version of it. And so I'm just going to go every other one for right now. Now, like I said, you have to make your own decision about what your scale will be. So it might not be going up by 5, although it might. You'll have to think about what the problem requires. And so you'll want to do that for not only the horizontal but the vertical axis. And so you will also do it along the vertical axis here. So make sure it's well lined up. Okay, so that gives you an idea how to create some scale numbers. And then, as always, you're going to have to label your axes. So you can create a text box again. And what I would like everyone to do is for the horizontal axis to be the plain, the dozens of plain cookies. And then for the vertical axis to be the dozens of ice cookies. Okay, so once you've got that, you can also, if you right-click or control-click using an apple, on here, no, you don't have to do that. You can use the fill color and give it a little bit of background color. So you have to click on the edge and then go to fill color. Okay, now we've labeled our axes. Next, you are going to have to create a legend. So essentially what you're going to be doing in this assignment is creating a visual representation of points that meet the constraint and points that don't meet the constraint. So if the constraint in this case was time, and of course there's also cookie dough, icing, and oven space, you want to have a legend at the top that indicates meets time constraint and doesn't meet time constraint. Okay, and let's give that a different background color. And what you're going to be doing is plotting points on these axes, and you will be labeling the axes all the way up for both of them. And let's say you had a pair of coordinates, so that you were looking at whether or not 10 dozen plain cookies and 10 dozen iced cookies would meet the constraint for time. Well, you'll have to think about that, but let's just say that it did meet the constraint for time. You're going to put a point that you can use as a dot. And in this case, we're just going to use a shape, and then we're going to go to circle. And so at 1010, which is here, we're going to put a circle. And the question is, does it meet it or not? Well, let's say that it does. Then we will give it a certain color. And let's also be clear about what that colored dot is in the legend. And so if you, and let's all use the color blue for a dot that meets the constraint. And then also, let's use the color red for a dot that does not meet the constraint. So you can see I've got this, I guess that's a gray dot. So let's change the color here. So you click on it and then you'll go to fill. And let's give that maybe a little bit of a different color blue there. And then let's click on this and let's give this a color red. Okay, so this dot at 1010, or this point at 1010, let's say that meets the time constraint. In other words, that it doesn't go over the amount of time that they can use to make cookies. But then maybe you will look at, let's say, where you make 90 of plain cookies and 90 ice cookies, and that doesn't meet the constraint. In other words, that takes too much time. So then what you'll want to do is put a dot at 90, so that it shows that it's outside of the, it does not meet the constraint. So there's your red dot there. And that's actually happening. That's kind of going into the legend, but that's okay. And let's say that there was another pair of dozens of plain cookies and dozens of ice cookies that did not meet the constraint. And it fell maybe at 85 and let's say 70 or something like that, and you could put the dot around there. And so what you're going to do is you will have a picture after you have put a lot of dots on this. Some of them will be blue for meet the constraints, and they'll be mostly in this area, and red dots, which will be mostly in this area. And you'll have a picture of how many cookies you can make of each kind. So that's what you're going to be doing. Now the next step is to share this. And the first thing you have to do when you click on share is you have to give it a title. So time constraint. And then also include your group name. So this is the Bakeys. And then you're going to need to, once you've created it, invite people. So you will use their Gmail account, their school Gmail account. So something like, I think at osclk.net, and then you'll put other members of your group in there, and you will also include me. Now again, this is their osclk.net address, and then you're going to go share and save. And then the other people can add to this picture. Okay, so that's the process of doing this. More details about the assignment itself will be in the email. Let me know if you have any questions via email or in school tomorrow.